Welcome back to the Whisper Knows. This is the place where stories don't scream, they whisper. Tonight's question is simple, and once you hear it, you won't be able to unhear it. Some sounds only exist when the world goes quiet, when the traffic fades, when the house settles, when even your own thoughts slow down enough to listen. And sometimes those sounds don't come from outside your room. They come from the dark itself. Because tonight's question is this: what if it's true that the night whisper knows your name? Not guesses it, not learns it, but knows it. The way someone knows something they've been waiting to say.
Evan first heard the whisper at exactly 2:41 a.m. He wasn't asleep. He wasn't dreaming. He was lying still in bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling fan as it turned in slow, lazy circles. The apartment was silent in that heavy way that only exists late at night. No cars, no voices, just the soft electrical hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the distant ticking of the clock on the wall. Evan had always liked that hour. It felt private, untouched. That's why the sound didn't make sense. At first, it wasn't a word, just a breath, a thin sound like air slipping through teeth, so faint he almost dismissed it as the building settling. Almost. Then it came again, closer this time, right beside his bed. Evan. His name didn't echo, it didn't float, it pressed. Evan's body locked up instantly, every muscle stiff, heart slamming against his ribs. He didn't answer, didn't move, didn't even blink. His mind raced through explanations. A neighbor, a voice through the vent, a half-dream. But he knew his own name when he heard it, and he knew when it was spoken by something that didn't breathe like a person. The whisper hadn't come from the hallway. It hadn't come from the window. It had come from the darkness between his bed and the wall, and it sounded patient.
Evan stayed awake until sunrise. Every few minutes he convinced himself it had been nothing. Stress, imagination, a trick of a tired mind. But every time his eyelids grew heavy, that same thought stopped him cold. What if it says my name again? Morning light eventually crept into the room, thin and gray. Nothing else happened. That day, Evan told no one. Not because he wasn't scared, because something about the whisper felt conditional, like it had been waiting for something. That night, Evan prepared. He left the lamp on, pulled the door closed, turned on white noise from his phone. He lay perfectly still, staring at the wall, daring the darkness to try again. 2:41 a.m. passed. Nothing. Relief washed over him so fast it almost made him laugh. He closed his eyes. That's when the whisper returned. Not louder, closer. Evan. This time it came from above him, from the ceiling. His eyes snapped open. The fan was still turning, the light was still on, but his shadow on the wall didn't match his body. It leaned forward while he lay still, and the whisper spoke again, softer now. You heard me. Evan slammed his eyes shut. There was a rule he'd heard as a kid, one of those things people say half-jokingly. Don't answer voices at night. He didn't know why the rule existed, but suddenly he understood the cost of breaking it.
The next morning, Evan found scratches on the inside of his closet door. Thin, vertical, too high to be accidental. He told himself it was old damage that he'd never noticed before. That night, he slept on the couch with every light in the apartment on. The whisper didn't come. The night after that, he slept in his bed again. It waited. 2:41 a.m. Evan. He didn't open his eyes this time. The whisper sounded different, familiar. It took him a second to realize why. It was using his voice. Not perfectly, but close enough to be wrong. The same rhythm, the same soft catch in the throat. Evan, it whispered again, sounding almost disappointed. Why won't you look at me? His heart hammered so hard it hurt. The whisper sighed, and then it said something Evan had never told anyone, something only he knew, something he hadn't thought about in years. That was when he understood the truth. The night whisper didn't just know his name, it knew him, and it was learning faster every night.
Evan didn't sleep after that. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the dark corner of the room until dawn. Nothing moved, nothing spoke. But when the sun finally rose, he noticed something that made his stomach drop. The scratches on the closet door were gone. In their place were fingerprints, pressed into the wood from the inside. That night, Evan packed a bag. He planned to stay with a friend. But as he stepped into the hallway, his phone buzzed in his pocket. A voicemail. No number, no timestamp, just a single audio file. He didn't press play. He didn't need to, because from inside his phone came the sound of a whisper using his voice, saying his name, slowly, lovingly, as if it had finally learned how.
Evan stood in the hallway with his bag slipping from his shoulder, staring at his phone like it was alive. The voicemail icon pulsed once, then stopped. The building was quiet. No footsteps, no elevator chime, no neighbor's TV. And still, from the speaker, without him touching anything, his own voice whispered, "Evan?" Not a recording, not a prank. It sounded fresh, wet, like breath against a microphone. Evan's hands trembled as he shoved the phone into his pocket and walked fast, too fast, down the stairs. Outside, the night air felt sharp, clean, normal. He kept walking until he reached his car. He didn't look back. He didn't want to see if his shadow was following him at a different angle. He drove across town to Jonah's place, a friend from college who lived in a small house with a bright porch light and too many wind chimes. Jonah opened the door in sweatpants, blinking. "Evan? It's, 3 in the morning?" Evan's mouth opened, but the words wouldn't line up. I just need somewhere to sleep," he managed. Jonah frowned. "Did something happen?" Evan stepped inside, and the warmth of the house hit him like a blanket. For a moment, he almost believed he'd escaped. Then Jonah's wind chimes rang softly, not from the porch, from the hallway inside the house. Jonah didn't notice, but Evan did, because the sound wasn't random. It came in a pattern, like someone was testing the room, finding the best place for a whisper to land. Evan forced a laugh. "Do you have, a nightlight?" Jonah grinned, confused. "Sure, if you're scared of ghosts." Evan didn't smile back, because ghosts don't use your voice.
Evan tried to sleep on Jonah's couch. The TV was on. The kitchen light was on. Jonah even left the porch light blazing like a lighthouse. But Evan's eyes stayed open. He couldn't stop thinking about the voicemail, about how the whisper had followed him out of his apartment, about how it had found him through the one thing he always carried, his phone. At 4:12 a.m., Evan sat up and opened his browser. He didn't know what he was looking for, just anything that made this make sense. He typed, "Whisper at night says my name." Thousands of results: sleep paralysis, anxiety, tinnitus, urban legends. Then he found a dead forum thread from 10 years ago. The page was almost blank, white background, black text, no images. The title read, "Don't answer when it uses your name." Evan clicked. The first post was short. It happens at the same time every night. It starts as your name. Then it starts as your voice. It gets closer when you listen. It gets stronger when you fear it. And it only stops when you give it something to hold. Evan's throat tightened. He scrolled. There were comments from users with names like Nocturne_13 and Quiet Room and Sleepwalker 0. Most were frantic, some were broken sentences, some were just one word: run. Don't look. It's in the mirror. It's in the phone. It's in the gaps. Evan read until his eyes burned, and then he found the last comment in the thread. It was posted by someone named Jonah_H. Evan's stomach went cold. The comment was dated 9 years ago, and it said, "It stopped when I let it say my name in someone else's house. It needs witnesses. If nobody hears it, it gets angry." Evan stared at the screen. Then he heard Jonah shift in the bedroom down the hall, a sleepy cough, a floorboard creak, and Evan realized what the whisper had been doing. It hadn't followed him to Jonah's house to stay with him. It had followed him to be heard by someone else.
Evan didn't wake Jonah. He told himself he'd leave at first light. He sat on the couch and watched the hallway like it was a mouth that might speak. At 2:41 a.m. the next night, Evan wasn't in bed. He was in Jonah's living room, every light on, phone face down on the coffee table like a trapped animal. Jonah sat across from him, rubbing his eyes. "You're seriously not gonna tell me what's going on?" he asked. Evan's voice came out thin. "I just need you to trust me, okay?" Jonah scoffed. "This is insane!" Evan didn't argue. He stared at the dark seam under Jonah's hallway door, because darkness isn't always a lack of light. Sometimes it's a shape, a presence, a doorway. 2:40 a.m. Jonah yawned, annoyed. "So what, we're waiting for—" Evan held up a hand. 2:41, the wind chimes rang. Once, then silence. Then Evan's phone vibrated, just one soft buzz. Jonah glanced down. "Is that?" And before Evan could stop him, Jonah picked up the phone and pressed it to his ear. Evan's heart dropped. "No, Jonah, don't!" Too late. The whisper came through the speaker. Not loud, not dramatic, just close enough to feel like it was behind Jonah's teeth. It said, "Evan." Jonah froze. His eyes went glassy for a moment, like he'd been unplugged from his own body. Evan grabbed Jonah's wrist. "Jonah, Jonah, look at me!" Jonah blinked. Then he whispered, barely audible, It knew you were here." Evan's breath shook, because Jonah hadn't just heard the whisper. Jonah had heard something else too, a second sound beneath it, a soft, pleased inhale, like the whisper was smiling. And then Jonah said the words Evan had been dreading. "It didn't stop," Jonah whispered. "It moved." Evan swallowed. "Moved where?"
Jonah's eyes drifted, slow and wrong, toward the hallway, then toward the mirror hanging on the wall beside the front door, and Jonah's mouth opened slightly as if he were listening to someone standing inside the glass. "It's practicing on me," Jonah said.
Evan grabbed the forum thread again, hands shaking, and scrolled like his life depended on it. Because it did. He found another comment buried near the bottom, written by someone who sounded calm. Too calm. "It can't take you unless you respond, but it can anchor itself to you if you listen long enough. To break the anchor, you have to drown it out with your own voice, not speaking back, but speaking over. And you have to do it in the dark, where it's strongest, because it hates being ignored in its own home." Evan read it twice. Then he looked at Jonah. Jonah was still staring at the mirror. His reflection looked normal, but his shadow on the wall beside him tilted its head toward Evan. Evan's blood ran cold. "That's not you," Evan whispered. Jonah didn't blink. "It's learning my face." Evan stood slowly, like sudden movement might crack the room open. He walked to the light switch and placed his fingers on it. Jonah's eyes widened, real fear now. "No," Jonah said, "don't turn them off." Evan's voice shook, but he forced it steady. "If it needs witnesses," he said, "then it's going to hate what I'm about to do." Jonah swallowed. "What are you going to do?" Evan stared at the mirror, at the hallway, at the phone, at the corners where shadows gather like water. He whispered, "I'm going to make it unheard." Then Evan flipped the switch. Darkness fell instantly. The wind chimes stopped. The house held its breath. And in the silence, the whisper came, right between them, so close it felt warm. "Evan." Evan didn't answer. He started talking, not to the whisper, over it, loudly, constantly, like a flood. He recited anything he could remember, old songs, grocery lists, childhood prayers, nonsense words. His voice filled the dark. The whisper tried again. "Evan." Evan spoke louder. The whisper changed tone, irritation creeping in. "Evan." Evan kept talking. Jonah began to shake beside him. Then, from the mirror, a new sound emerged. A crack, soft at first, like ice splitting. Then a second crack, then a third. Evan's voice didn't stop, because the moment he stopped, it would speak. And if it spoke, it would be heard. And if it was heard, it would stay. When the lights finally snapped back on, because they did by themselves, Evan was hoarse. His throat felt raw, like he'd swallowed sand. Jonah was on the floor, palms pressed over his ears, trembling. The mirror by the door was unchanged. No cracks, no shattered glass. Just Evan and Jonah reflected back, breathing hard. For one perfect second, Evan believed it worked. Then Jonah slowly lifted his head. His eyes focused on Evan with strange clarity, too sharp, too awake. Jonah smiled. It wasn't Jonah's smile. It was patient, familiar, the kind of expression that had always lived behind the whisper. Jonah's mouth opened, and Evan heard it, not from the phone, not from the hallway, not from the darkness, from Jonah. In Jonah's voice, but shaped like Evan's voice, layered like an echo that didn't belong. "Evan," Jonah said softly. Evan stepped back, every hair on his arms rising. Jonah stood, calm as a statue. Then Jonah's shadow on the wall detached, just slightly, like it no longer needed Jonah to stand.
The shadow leaned toward Evan, and Evan felt the whisper slide into the room like a hand into a glove. Once Jonah blinked. A tear slipped from his eye, as if some part of him was trapped inside, watching. And Jonah's mouth moved again. This time, the whisper wasn't asking, it wasn't calling, it was claiming. "Now," it said, "you can't pretend you didn't hear me." This has been The Whisper Knows, and tonight, if you ever hear a whisper say your name from the dark, don't answer, don't listen, because the moment it learns your voice, it won't need the night to speak. Good night.
Subscribe if you dare to listen.